Hey guys, it's Julian. Happy 2019. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to make warp drums like Arca. So, I'm going to be giving away the project file and samples from this video free in the description, so make sure to check that out. And if you're a patron on my Patreon at any tier, check there because you'll be able to download it without having to go through a download gate. And yeah, let's get started. So, this loop you heard in the intro, we're at 130 BPM. The first sound we have here is this kick, which sounds like this. So what I was going for here was kind of like a big, punchy, kind of just like deep, like really hard-hitting kick, like you hear in a lot of Arca's tracks. He doesn't have like a particular style of kick that he uses a lot. He uses a lot of different things, but I've noticed they all tend to be like these really big, just kind of like powerful, sort of like, yeah, kind of like bassy kicks like this. So the way I made this one was by layering two things together. We've got this kick, and then this one. So yeah, so this first one is more just kind of like in the high end. I've got it high pass here. If I turn off the filter, you can hear it's more of like a live sounding kick. So I was just kind of using it to get that aspect. And then I have this one, which is adding a bit of punch in the high end. You can hear it, but it's mostly just giving you that deep thumping low end. And then when you put them together, there you go. It's the perfect combination. And then to sort of glue these together, I have a bit of saturation as well. You can see I turn up the drive a bit here, and then I turn up the bass frequency on the analog clip. If I turn this off, you can hear it sounds like this. Versus when I turn it on, you can hear it's like really powerful. So the saturation is pretty important here. It definitely helps to like glue these together, like I said, and just kind of like bring out the punchiness, I guess. Like it gives a lot more power to the sound. That's the kick. The next thing I have here is the percussion, which altogether sounds like this. This is 3 layers. We have this one, which is made with operator. This one, which is just kind of like a simple percussion sound. And then this one, which is like this little reverse sound. So for the operator sound, the way that I made that was, like I said, using operator. What we've got here is we've got some white noise, and then that's going into a bandpass filter. And so on the bandpass filter, what I have is I have the resonance up really high. And then what this is doing is this is creating sort of like a tone, which you can obviously hear. And then I'm just kind of like distorting it to just like way beyond the limits of distortion, if they even exist. But yeah, basically the goal here is just to create this kind of like tone using the bandpass filter, and then when you distort it, that's how you get that really rough kind of sound. And so I'll show you what this sounds like just coming out of operator. Like I said, there's the tone that we're creating. And then when we start adding the saturator and then the amp, you can hear that's when it gets like really, really crazy there. And then I have an erosion on the end of the chain there. Just to kind of like give it a bit of like crunch at the end of it. You can hear, I feel like it really helps to drive this home and make it a little bit less simple and a bit more textured. Now, one important thing with this is you can see in the MIDI here, these two notes are an octave apart. It's just playing C, C4 there, and then C5. And then to kind of like go with this, what I've done here on the filter is if you right click, you can do this thing called play by key here. And what that does is it basically key tracks it. So if you don't know what key tracking is, it's actually every synth is using key tracking on the oscillators. Like when you play a pitch, basically what key tracking is it says wherever you play the pitch, that is where the filter or the pitch of your oscillator or whatever sort of parameter you have mapped to it is going to be. So in this case, yeah, I'm key tracking the filter, meaning when I play down here, it plays down there. When I play up here, it plays a higher note. So just kind of like an added detail. You don't have to turn that on by right-clicking. You can also turn on this frequency key thing down here if you just turn that up. But if you right-click on this, you can also do it. And yeah, that's how I made that sound. Then the next percussion sound is just this little thing. It's just like a nice kind of like percussion that's playing off of those other ones. And then the last one we have here is this little reverse percussion, which sounds like this. So this has no processing. The way I made it was I just took this sound So I took that sound, and then you can hear that has a pretty hard punch, like a punchy kind of hit at the start. So what I did here was I just reversed that, and then I lined it up. I used this fade a little bit to help me as well, but I kind of like lined it up with the grid, so you still get some percussion there, but it's reversed. Like, it's still on the grid, and you still hear that little sound, which does work as a percussion. Like, that hits hard enough on its own to work, I feel like. But yeah, then you just kind of have this reverse thing playing into it, and it sounds really cool. And this is a technique I hear a lot in Arca's music. Like, he's very creative with his percussion, and he does a lot of stuff like this to kind of make it just sound a little bit more like warped, like I said, and just more creative. So yeah, that's how I did that. The next thing we have here are these two sets of shakers, which sound like this. So what I've got here is actually a technique you guys have heard me use a bit on this channel before. Basically, I have two shakers. So one is playing straight 16th notes like this, and then I've got this auto pan on there to kind of give it some motion and give the beat some stereo depth. And then on the second one, I've got this little pattern. So they're kind of like playing off of each other, because you can hear, you get that from this one, but then you're getting the straight 16th notes from this one. And if you play either of them on their own, I feel like the beat isn't as solid, but when you have both of them, it really adds a lot of energy. So those are the shakers. The last thing I have here is the clap, which sounds like this. So the way I made this was with two layers. One, the actual clap, and then the second one here are these little Foley sounds, which I'll talk about in a moment. So the way I did this clap was just by getting a kind of like nice clap sample. I'll show you the original sample. That one. And then what I did was I just kind of like accentuated what I liked about it. So I liked how it was really punchy. And I also liked how it kind of felt like roomy. Like it sounded like it was in a room. So I added a bit of saturation and some reverb. So on the saturator here, you can see all I did was just turn up the drive, and then I kept it on the analog clip mode. It's really not a whole lot to it. Just kind of like, yeah, bringing out the punch a bit more, making it a bit more powerful and impactful. Then after that, I have this reverb, like I said, and that one's set pretty simply. I just kind of turn up K time and the dry wet a bit. And yeah, you can hear that's just adding the space. Since the speed is halftime, meaning it has that kind of like slow, like feel. Or if you want to be more technical, meaning the snare is hitting on the 3 as opposed to the 2 and 4. You have a lot of space to have like reverb and stuff with this kind of clap. And yeah, there's just a lot of room to play around with, so I definitely wanted to take advantage of that and add this reverb on there. Then the next thing we have is, like I said, these Foley sounds. So what these are these little Foley sounds. Those two little things, like some kind of like live recordings I had. And what I did was I just took them in here, and you can see I have them kind of going into the clap. Like they're lined up perfectly with when that clap hits. And yeah, they just kind of like add a bit more dimension to it and give it a bit more life. And this is a technique I hear in Arca tracks a lot. Like something he does really well is he makes his drums sound kind of like alive. Like they don't just sound like samples playing, but they sound like very textured and very much like they're all, like I said, kind of like live. Like they sound like they're all very together is the best way I could put it. And so a really good way to do this is by having things like this, like having this Foley sound kind of going into the clap. So it's not just like the abrupt hit of that clap, but you get it kind of like smoother. And it feels like it's sort of, like I said, just more organic. So then those are all the drums. On the group here, I have a bit of processing. I have some saturation. You can see all I did actually was I just dropped the saturator on and I turned up the drive a bit. But if I play this drum loop without the saturation on it, you can hear it's a lot more flat and dull sounding. So the saturation is definitely doing a lot here. And I think it's very important also to kind of like do some sort of umbrella processing on the whole group of your drums for the style. And what I mean by umbrella processing is if you group all these together and put one effect on them, you're sort of like putting an umbrella over them. That's going to help make them all sound very similar texturally and sonically. And yeah, it's just kind of gonna help glue everything together. And I know this is like an issue a lot of times with more like inexperienced producers and even some more experienced producers, where like you feel like your drums are kind of not all in the same world, or they don't sound like they all belong together. Like they sound like a bunch of samples from a bunch of different places. Well, this is a really good way to solve that problem. If you put some processing, especially something like this that changes the texture of the sound so drastically, on the group of drums, it'll help glue them all together a lot better. Like if you hear this loop again on its own without the saturation, like, no, not to be like weird, but that just sounds kind of awful. Like that's the best way I can put it. Like it just doesn't sound like these are all one cohesive drum loop. It just sounds like a bunch of drum sounds together, like I was saying. But when we add the saturation, there you go. It really helps to glue everything together. So that's pretty much it for this one, guys. I just want to show you some techniques. And yeah, so that's gonna be it for today, guys. Make sure to let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. Once again, you get the project files and samples from this video for free in the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, you can get them there. Once again, happy 2019, everybody. And thank you again, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.